Hello guys, my name is Yana and today I'm going to talk about the Cold War. As known, at the end of the Second World War, two strong main powers emerged, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. But these two didn't get along well because of differences of ideology. So the end of the war also meant the end of their relation. Europe got split into two parts. The Oriental was strongly influenced by the Soviet Union, while the Occidental was with United States. The term Cold War was found appropriate because practically they didn't even touch. There was no direct armed conflict, although they used other things like propaganda, influences, espionage, and proxy wars. United States applied capitalism, that is a system in which everything is privately owned and run for profit, while the Soviet Union was communist. That is a system in which everyone owns the means to create a commonwealth. Here are some of the most important dates in my consideration. It definitely was an era full of changes and tension. And they are more than that. They are transcendent events for us nowadays. In my personal opinion, this war was kind of oddly advantageous in various aspects, but time-consuming. It has its consequences on both sides. It created an odd balance in the world by other countries being more involved in the situation, although in extreme tension. There were nuclear weapons, sheer childishness, spying, technology, and a bizarre solution. So this war had everything. Well, I'm here with Profe Gustavo. He's going to talk about us something about the Cold War. He's going to answer some questions and, well, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for considering me.
So, teacher, do you know what countries were the world's leaders during the period of the Cold War?
Sure, the United States of America and the USSR or the Soviet Union.
And do you know why did countries who were allies during the wars became enemies afterwards?
Okay, first of all, they were not allies as in friends. I mean, if you remember, during the Second World War, Germany betrayed Russia. They were originally allies, but Germany betrayed Russia as part of Operation Red Beer or something like that. I don't remember very well. But the thing is that Germany betrayed the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union declared war upon Germany, and since the allied countries were already at war with Germany, it was more a situation of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they became allies, but because it was good or it was like the best option at the time. Now, when they were fighting in Europe, the Soviet Union started liberating previous conquered territories. So, and since the Soviet Union was a communist, the United States didn't feel like leaving all Europe as a communist, all right? So that's why they entered the war, and they hastened the end of the war to avoid having a communist Europe because of the Soviet Union.
And where did the Cold War took place?
They actually, they never touched each other. It was never a war, like as we know it. But it had several fronts. You could tell the influence of both countries in some other conflicts in Europe or in Asia. For example, in Cuba, well, that's not in Europe, but in Cuba, no, we had influence by the Soviet Union and the United States. Cuba is still a communist country. We had influences on Vietnam, for example, and Korea, and some other countries in Europe and Asia.
And what is your opinion? What opinion did the general public have of the Cold War?
Well, of course, right off the bat, the general public was afraid. They were afraid of another war after the Second World War, which was the most devastating war in history. But they were mostly afraid due to the period or to this event we call the nuclear race. These two countries, the USA and the Soviet Union, developed or tried to develop nuclear weapons as a mass production. So there was this public fear of a nuclear conflict. In fact, for example, in the United States, in those particular times, when you went to the movies, you know, before you saw the actual film you paid to watch, there was this advertisement or announcement to the general public of what you had to do in case of a nuclear attack. We saw an American society fearful of this conflict, in which they created bunkers. People started saving goods and food in case of a nuclear holocaust. So it was a total panic, I guess.
Okay, and what types of weapons did the two world powers have at their disposal?
Well, like I said, they never got to touch each other as like a conflict. But if I had to say weapons they had, I would choose information. The Cold War was the period when most of the spies, as we know them today, were developed. Espionage and communications technology, and a lot of things developed in order to gain an advantage over information that the other country possessed. I mean, in case of an attack, right? Of course, they had like their weaponry, like, I don't know, tanks, weapons, stuff like that, but it was mostly the Second World War technology. What really developed during this period, I consider, was this network of information that both countries tried to steal from one another.
Well, thank you for your information. That was very developing.
Okay, thanks.
Or develop. And thank you very much for doing this interview.
Thank you, Dika. Have a nice day.